All right, welcome back to another edition of COEXIST. It's Conversation for Conservation. I'm your host, Co Lewis, and I'm so excited. This is going to be an amazing show because I have the very first guest I ever had on COEXIST, and it's my special friend Larry Laverty, who is this. I call him like my Renaissance man. The man does it all. He's an actor. He's a professional actor. Has been doing that for decades. He's an author. He's a photographer. He's a mountaineer. He's a conservationist. He just does everything. And you know, when I first learned about Larry Laverty, I heard about him from different events. I'm the co-founder of Nasefu Wildlife. It's an anti-poaching foundation based in Zambia. And we would have these events, and other people in the world of conservation would come up to me and say, "Do you know Larry Laverty?" And I'm like, "No, but I keep hearing his name. I feel like I know him." And we've developed this amazing friendship, especially, the past couple of years, because we have these common interests of wanting to change the world, not just talking about it, but actually doing something. So welcome to IQ Podcasts. Again, Larry, having you on is a thrill. I'm so excited to catch up with you. We talk regularly, but you were working really hard on this documentary called Where Buffalo Roam, and we're going to get into it. We're going to play some clips about it. But how are you doing? How's the world of COVID treating you? Like how's life up in Northern California?
It put the bonkers on trips I had planned, especially last year, to complete
Yeah.
my second book on elephants. But I've made the best of it because I'm climbing Mount Everest here in a couple of months, and so I've been focusing on training on that. And then, of course, as you mentioned, finishing up the work on the documentary Where Buffalo Roam.
Right. So just think about that last few sentences that Larry Laverty just said. I'm climbing Mount Everest, because we all do. You've been training, and I've been watching your training because you would post your training stuff. You're
Mm.
working on your second book. Your first book that came out in 2019 was Power and Majesty, The Plight and Preservation of the African Elephant. And it is a magnificent book. I have a copy at home. It because you're a very, very skilled photographer, you sit there and you wait for those perfect moments. I mean, you're out there, you said, sometimes hours and hours waiting for that one shot, and you get that shot. So you compiled all these beautiful photographs. Your stuff has been seen around the world. You've got your own book, and now you're working on your second book. So tell us about the second book before we get to your documentary. What is
Okay.
the second book?
As implied in the title, the first book was about African elephant. So the second book will be the
Mhm.
Asian elephant. And
Mhm.
they're a totally different species, and it's a totally different world. And I had never been to Asia before. So I've already made one trip to Sri Lanka to survey that country. And now I'm going to make a number of more trips so that I can do about 10 countries of Asia, as I did about 10 countries of Africa, to get a good representation of just what the lives of elephants are, and in this case, Asian elephants.
So in 2017, you've been a professional actor for decades. I mean, you've had a very steady career. A lot of people, don't last that long in the field, and you have. So you've been very fortunate with that. And you took that platform, and you saw the need for people to become more aware of what was happening in the world, maybe with your travels, or maybe because you like to travel. So in 2017, you decided, I'm going to start being vocal about this. I'm going to start being an activist, and I'm going to try to change the world and bring about awareness. What was the impetus? What was there a particular issue that you finally said, I'm doing it now. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm actually going to do it. Or was this something that was building over time, and it finally just erupted and you said, I got to get out there and I got to change the world?
So you're referring to my activism in general?
Yes. When you just
Okay, yeah.
decided, I'm going forward. I'm not just doing this. I'm getting
Yeah.
out there and I'm spreading the word.
Yeah, that's been going for pretty much all my life. I joined the Sierra Club when I was 11 years old, and the Audubon Society. I've just been really connected with animals, and increasingly so throughout my life. There were a couple of landmark points along the way. One was around 2000 when I first learned about the problems with the Yellowstone buffalo. And so that got me really upset because my parents had taken me all through my childhood to Yellowstone, and I saw the buffalo when I was just a very little boy, and they are Yellowstone to me, and so that connected. And so when I learned about the terrible things happening to them up there, I decided I have to support and spread the word for those who are actually on the ground up there working hard to try to change things. So that got me more involved. I was still deep in my career at that point, but the bad news from Montana was really bugging me. And so then, by the time 2013 came around, my fuse was already lit to get involved, and but this time it was somewhat stronger because it was the ivory crisis, and the event happened to be the first global march for elephants. And I'd learned about that just by going through the local newspaper here, that there was going to be a march in San Francisco. And now I'm no protester or picket line walker or any of that. I've never protested a thing in my life up until that point. But I went to San Francisco on that day in October 2013. Marched. I joined 1,000 people, and as I was walking along, I thought, this is a miracle. I'm used to living here in the Bay Area. I'm used to people protesting, but it's always in their own self-interest. This was protesting on behalf of another animal, another species, and I'd never heard of anything that big before. And for that first global march in 2013, over 50 cities around the world took part. This this was a momentous day in the history of the world, whether most people realize it or not, that for a moment we got outside of ourselves and our little human dramas, and we started looking at the planet in a different way. So that was the beginning, 2013, and then by 2015 I made my first trip to Africa. And then the idea came from everybody else, not from myself, that I should do a book. And then the book came out in 2019.
You've been a photographer for a really long time, and now using the lens as a tool to fight for the voiceless is something that is perfect for you. I mean, I really can't think of somebody more, you know, designed to be, in the right place at the right time with the right skill set to really maximize all the capabilities that you have to focus on the plight of things that really need help. And you're right, that global march is a powerful thing when you realize the whole globe is participating in the same thing. Now it's the global march for elephants and rhinos, and we've participated. I have. Nisefu Wildlife has participated. It is a powerful thing. You feel like you're part of the solution to something. You're bringing about awareness. And how do you feel from the very first global march to today? Do you think things are getting better? Is awareness improving, or what's your take on everything right now? Before we get to your documentary, I just kind of want to set up our listeners and our viewers where your mind's at and where your soul's at.
Yeah, thank you. Uh, we're in a different place for certain because as a society, as a global society, we're preoccupied with this virus that's going around. It's really distracted us. And in the meantime, with so much time on our hands, we've gotten off on some interesting tangents that who knows where this is going to drive our society, not only in the United States, but around the world. Going in some new and different directions, some good, some not so good. So it's all got to play out. But in the meantime, I think there's generally an improvement in attention to wildlife, to animals in general, but the specifics are commonly lost because the news is just dominated by these new dramas that we're involved in.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, animals are dying right and left across the world for one reason or another. And as throughout human history, animals, whether they're wild or domestic, tend to take a back seat to whatever the human needs and priorities are. So that's a constant fight. I'm sure it has for people who've been speaking up for animals all along. I'm just grateful that people like you and with me, the voice that I've found that we have the means through various technologies to get the news out and to spread the word and to gain a bigger following. If even if it weren't for the newspaper, I would never have known for the Global March in
Yeah.
2013.
Hmm.
So it's just a matter of communicating and getting the news out. But there's still so much to be done because now that we know more and more, we realize just how large the problems are. So it's I'm optimistic, but I'm pessimistic all at the same time.
Funny you mentioned that because on my drive in today, I was thinking, people, I appreciated people send me all the information like news on elephants or lions or populations or poaching. I mean, I get hit with that a million times a day. And I have to tell you, I get really overwhelmed by it. I get overwhelmed because I feel like, am I making any kind of difference? Am I doing anything? Am I just a drop in the ocean doing nothing? And so when I get overwhelmed with all the negative, I just have to keep my eyes down on what I can fix and what I can control and what we're trying to do in the Nsefu sector in Zambia. And I'm sure you feel the same way, but you have to take that first step to impact people and to affect change. You have to take that first step like you did. I mean, you got to find that voice and you got to find that strength to persevere. So I was just curious in your mind where that all came from.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
let going to your documentary, two things come to mind. One of the guests that you helped me with, and you've been an amazing supporter of COEXIST, and I'm very grateful for it because this is a platform that we're trying to raise awareness. We're trying to give great organizations and great people a voice and a platform to be seen and heard, and people learn new things. And one of the people that you had set me up with for COEXIST was a guy named Mike Meese, and he's with the Buffalo Field Campaign, correct? That's the actual name of the organization. Um,
Correct.
so that's when I started becoming more aware of the Buffalo crisis going on. You had mentioned it to me, but when I had that interview with him, my eyes almost fell out of my head with what I was learning. I couldn't believe, again, a symbol of the American spirit, freedom, power, majesty, something kind of like our wild horses and burros. These figures that we've based our country on and our image on, we're the worst abusers of all of them. And I'm incredulous how this keeps happening. And I have to think it's because people don't know what's going on. And when I had that interview with Mike, you said you're going to love this guy, and I did. He's out this wood cabin. He's just like a mountain man kind of guy. And I really my soul was shattered what I was hearing. So Yellowstone has been something that you've loved and you've focused on, and you have been passionate about the buffalo. So walk us through where I'm an actor and now I'm creating a documentary about the issue of the buffalo in Yellowstone. And tell us how this all, did you just have an epiphany one night like, I'm going to make a documentary? Like how do you do that? I mean, like, where do you even start? You would know, like, where did this all come from? What triggered you saying, I'm going to do this documentary?
Well, like most things in life, it has a rather long history,
Mhm.
and of course, again, thanks to the computer, I really became a nut on the computer once the internet was available to promote my acting career.
Mhm.
And in the process, I was also aware of inputs into that system about conservation, wildlife conservation. And so it's there that I first learned about Mike and his efforts, which had just started at that
Mhm.
point, at least in the public knowledge. He'd started back about 1990 or so with an interest in conservation, and then in '94 he was really getting active up there in Montana, and by '97. His organization, his preliminary organization, had started this project called Buffalo Field Campaign, which had the same purpose that the current organization does, and
Mhm.
it just needed a kickoff. And so that was the very early bits of information that I learned about, such as the annual killing of the buffalo. Uh, that's what just like somebody sticking a hot stick in my eye. It was
Yeah.
imagine somebody going over to the beach, and there's people out there killing sea lions because they think there's too many of them, or maybe they just don't like them. But yet people are turning a blind eye, and it even becomes legal. It's okay to
Yeah.
go to the beach and kill seals.
Yeah.
That's what's going on up in Yellowstone, and has been going on. And in fact, it's been going on since shortly after the place was declared a park in 1872. It's man, in his infinite wisdom, uh, one misstep after another,
Yeah.
and Yellowstone is just a poster place for this. It's just each time a
Yeah.
new piece of news comes out of Yellowstone, my head just spins around that humanity can think and operate this way. So it just kept building this collection of information that I was getting out of Montana, thanks to Mike and the Buffalo Field campaign, that I wanted to support them more. So them being there and me being here, I thought the best I could do was just make contributions when I could afford it to what they were doing to support their court cases and their operations in the field. And then I thought, well, I can do a little bit more than that. I can start spreading the word myself, not just by referring people to Mike and the Buffalo Field campaign, but by telling people about the buffalo and the efforts of Buffalo Field campaign. And so as I've been doing that over the years, I thought, well, a book is good. Once I did the first book on elephants, I thought I'll do a book on the buffalo. And there are, like with elephants, there are plenty of picture books out there and storybooks about elephants, and there are a fair number about buffalo, but not from my perspective, and not with the intent that I have driving my work. So the book is in the works. A Yellowstone buffalo book will happen as soon as I complete this second book on elephants. But in the meantime, I thought I can put together a film, because I can use archival material. I can use photographs that I've already taken from recent trips to Yellowstone, and then I'll just hunt around, and I'll engage my good friend Isaac Pingree here, a producer in Oakland, to help me with this. And so he too scoured the internet, and we found all the footage and illustrations that, and also come from footage secured by Buffalo Field campaign, since they're out in the
Mhm.
field just about every day with the buffalo.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the path to this film. And now it's just a matter of figuring the best ways to get it seen by the most people. And then also, just by way of this, I became aware along the process that Ken Burns is working on a American Buffalo documentary that's supposed to be coming out,
Really?
I think, in about 3 years. So, in the meantime, in 3 years, thousands of buffalo will die.
Yeah.
So I was in a bit of a hurry. Once I conceived of the idea of my little film, I thought I got to get it out there as soon as possible. And so there's a groundswell of voices to bring this to greater light, especially as you alluded to earlier, that Yellowstone is buried in this country. It's up in the mountains. In the wintertime, it's almost inaccessible, and most of it's closed down, in fact, because of snow. You can't drive into Yellowstone in winter except for the northern section. And up there, being removed from the rest of the United States as it is, all sorts of things can take place without
Yeah.
the greater world knowing about it.
And this is true. So again, my guest is Larry Laverty. He's an actor. He's an activist, conservationist, a mountaineer, and he decided that he's going to put this documentary. It's a short documentary called "Where Buffalo Roam" out. And when I heard you were doing a documentary, I'm like, wow, that's a lot of work. I have to tell you, and I've got producer Sarah here and Derek in the studio here with me, and we were talking about this documentary. And we all said how shattered we were watching this. It is a hard documentary to see, but it's a must see because we literally cannot sit idly by and pretend it's not happening. Because when you look at the numbers, some of the things that I wrote down that I was jotting notes down, I couldn't even believe it. I had to do a double take. Like, did I just hear that? Did I just see that? We had 60 million buffalo at one point in time, 60 million. And because of mankind, trying to control the Indians, wiping out the Indians, they said, okay, we're going to wipe out the buffalo to do that. And it became a free for all. It was shooting contests, or were killing contests. They were trading on it. We got down to 23 buffalo left from 60
Wild
million.
buffalo,
Yeah, to 23. So the massacre was almost complete. It was almost complete. And in this film, you show how these remaining ones just survived by accident, by location. This must have been a really difficult thing for you to keep going through and learning all this stuff. You knew a lot about buffalo, but putting it together. But let's get to one clip right now. This is clip number 1. And Peter Coyote is the narrator, and I want to hear about that. But Sarah, I'm gonna try it. Let's see if I can do this. I don't know. Things could blow up. Larry, things could blow up. I'm handling stuff on the internet.
Well,
All right,
we'll
here
put
we
them
go.
back together if they do.
Yeah, if you see smoke, it's not a good sign. So hang on. I clicked it. Is it going? Okay. Let me try that again. That's what you get with live.
Buffalo first appeared in North America almost 200,000 years ago. By the year 1500, there were approximately 60 million of them here.
60 million. 60 million of them were here and got down to 23. Let me get to another clip here because they're just amazing snippets that we have that I want people to see. This is clip number 2.
Their big heads and shaggy brown coats made them stand out amongst all other living things. They were very social animals, living together in large groups, led by the older, wiser females. Males, when old enough to fend for themselves, would wander off from their families to live on their own, or join up with groups of other males.
Okay, so we're kind of getting the setup of where the buffalo came in. They're in Yellowstone. Now we're talking about these staggering numbers. When you put this together, you wanted to get a specific person narrating it, and you approached Peter Coyote about it. And I think it was the perfect match. Not only does he have a perfect name for what you're trying to achieve here, it really lends itself because he's done many great documentaries and he's done a lot of work.
Yeah.
How was it working with them? Are you excited? And where do you think you're going to enter this film? It should be entered in every possible festival because this is a must-see for everybody.
Yeah, I actually laid down the narration myself. I thought I didn't want this to soak up my life savings in some way. And I've done plenty of narration and so forth myself throughout my career. I thought I'd just do it myself. But then I got to thinking that when I listened to my track, I thought his delivery is, nobody is equal to Peter Coyote. as far
Correct.
as I'm concerned. So it was a no-brainer that I'd go that route, and then it became a matter of tracking him down. So I have a good buddy who's actually a neighbor of his over in Marin County. So I approached him. Can you talk to Peter for me?
Yeah.
And so he gave me his contact information actually, and I tried approaching that way. Then I knew that he was involved with another wildlife organization also in Marin County here,
Mhm.
and so I approached through there. Then I just took all these. I had one other approach. I went through all these avenues, and he wasn't responding. And I have to admit that when I get these cold contacts from people for whatever purpose in my industry, that I generally disregard them too, because you just can't deal with it all. We've got enough going on.
Yeah.
So then I thought, well, I'll just do the contacted one of his agents, and just negotiated with them. And so we arranged, because of the pandemic, that unfortunately we can't do this in person, which would have been my preference and would have been the standard operating procedure, that I would have been in the studio with him and we would have cooperated that way. But instead we did it all through basically like Zoom.
Yeah.
With a in a recording studio also in Marin with this wonderful fellow who goes way back in rock and roll history. He retired to Marin, and he spent a lot of time in the San Francisco rock and roll heyday. So he was an iconic figure, and he knew his stuff, and of course knew Peter. So it was the four of us, my buddy Isaac Pingree, who I co-produced this film with, and then those two. And it took about 3 takes, and we were done. And Peter had basically just given it a glance, and
Yeah.
mysteriously, all the innuendo, all the subtleties come rushing forth, and it's not the physical qualities of his voice. It's the ability of his mind, especially at this stage. He's like a fine bottle of wine at this point.
Yeah. And they know exactly what they're reacting to. They genuinely react the right way. It's almost innate. You know what I mean? They know exactly what to put on a subject or what to back off on. It is spectacular. Again, the documentary, the short, is called Where Buffalo Roam, and it was created in response to what is going on in Yellowstone. And Yellowstone has this herd of buffalo. And when people are looking away, or it's the winter time, or, under cloak and dagger, these animals are being slaughtered. And I think America and the world needs to know what's really going on. So give us the setup of how many buffalo are in the area and what is going on with the Montana Beef Association and probably the Bureau of Land Management, which should be Bureau of Land Mismanagement, because they're so awful. So what is the setup? What is the scenario going on right now in Yellowstone? What do people need to know about?
Well, there's been a fight ever since Yellowstone became a park. And it all happened at the same time. There was a gold rush in the area a number of years before in the Black Hills, which attracted thousands of settlers and was already starting these conflicts with the Native Americans. And so there was just this attraction to that part of the country for mining and other things from the frontiers people, the people from the East Coast of the early United States who were making their way west. And so in 1872, the park was set aside in somewhat arbitrary boundaries that didn't consider the entire ecosystem in which everything takes place there, the lives of all the wild animals and the flows of the water, the rivers. It was all just basically this square box inserted into this country. They knew the volcanic features, the geysers and so forth, were attractive and should be preserved. But in terms of wildlife, most wildlife, and especially the buffalo, fell under this perception from early pioneers that that they were some primitive life forms and they need to be removed so that civilization can move in and function. So this mindset, this traditional mindset that goes back to when the first settlers moved into that part of the country still exists today, especially amongst the cattlemen of Montana.
Yeah, and stop right there, because I will put it out there, and I want to reiterate, the cattle industry is so destructive in so many ways. And if you're looking at the state of our planet, state of our country, the state of the environment, and everything tied to it, I am telling you, you can aim right at the cattle industry, not even mentioning the horror of the actual impact on the animals. That aside, that's just built-in awfulness. It's everything else, because it's so expensive to raise cattle, and the impact of the methane and just everything to do with the cattle industry is awful, and it continues on, and it's directly impacting Yellowstone. So please continue.
Yeah, and unfortunately, uh, it's in addition to the industry, the beef people themselves, it's we, the public. If there wasn't a demand for beef, for hamburgers and steaks like there is, then these people up there might think of other things to do with their lives and other ways to make money. But there's money in raising cows, and especially up in that part of the world, there's a lot of people that have been doing this for generations. Their great 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 grandparents homesteaded in that part of the world, and so it's in their blood, it's who they are, and so it's rationalized in their heads. But again, they can be demonized for what's going on the ground, specifically with the buffalo. But getting to your point about the beef industry in general, we are like the people that give junkies their heroin to shoot up.
Yeah,
If
we're
we just
perpetuating the problem.
if we
Yeah.
just stop buying steaks and stop driving through McDonald's, uh, and also
Mhm.
just realize that all this red meat isn't that good for us anyway. If you want to live a long life, it may
Right.
taste good, but let's start using our heads a little bit.
As I
So
say, when you
yeah,
pull back the curtain and you see the horror behind it, you don't
yeah.
wanna be part of it, you know what I mean? I'm a vegetarian, and I'm good. I don't miss any of it, because I looked behind the curtain, I'm like, "I don't wanna be part of that. I don't wanna be impacting the lives and all the destruction behind it." So, you're absolutely right. We have to change our mindset. Even if we start slowly, people really dropping their meat consumption, that's a start in the right direction. So let me ask you, how many buffalo are in Yellowstone right now?
Right this very minute, I can't tell you exactly the number,
Mhm.
and even during the annual count, it's a general estimate. But the last year there were roughly about 4,800 in the park itself, and then of course, off in the woods around the park in the forest, there are a few, and of course, some are missed during the count. But they back in 1995, the state of Montana, spurred by this cattle industry, sued Yellowstone Park. They sued the National Park Service for allowing the buffalo in the park to leave the park and come down and mingle with their beef cattle, either in the national forests where these cattlemen lease land from the
Mhm.
Forest Service, or onto their own private places. So the suit took a long time to sort out, but finally in 2000, this arrangement was reached between these 5 government agencies, 3 federal and 2 state of Montana, along with 3 Native American groups, that the buffalo were to be controlled. They were to be kept in the park. They were to be kept at a certain population within the park. And these sorts of things, including this, there's a disease that was, it's not quite sure where it came from, but it's possible that it was introduced by beef cattle. It was
Mhm.
introduced to the entire Yellowstone ecosystem, so that today buffalo and elk carries this. It's primarily a reproductive disease, and so it spread into the beef cattle in Montana and threatened the beef industry. So in reaction to that, they got their hackles up and without any scientific proof have pressured their state legislature and federal authorities to come down on the buffalo. So that's what's led to this annual slaughter each year. It's to control the buffalo leaving Yellowstone Park. They're not allowed to leave, basically. They're especially on the north side of the park. There's basically two main migration ways, one out to the west of the park and one out to the north. And so they're herded and lured into these traps and then sent off to a couple of slaughter facilities nearby.
And again, we're slaughtering the spirit of America. Again, the wild horses, Mustangs, the buffalo, these are the icons of our country. And the way we are treating them is we should never sleep again. What are we doing? I mean, shame on us. I mean, how do you sleep at night letting this stuff happen on such a grand scale? And, going through, like I said, we're talking about your documentary that has just been released called Where Buffalo Roam. And when you hear the staggering statistics, again, I mentioned there used to be 60 million buffalo, and they were massacred down to a remaining 23. And they finally, some people felt some guilt and said, you know what, we need to bring this species back. And they slowly did. But when you look at the history and let's get to another clip. I wonder if this one mentions it here. I'm going to get to a clip 4. If not, we'll carry on because again, it's a short documentary, but it is insanely powerful and you will feel ashamed of being an American, knowing what our forefathers and how we treated this land and this gift and this beauty and this beautiful park, how we've treated these animals that were around and they served a purpose and they found a perfect balance with the Indian nations. But we come along, settlers and pioneers, and we're like, hey, we're just going to start shooting everything. I can't even go into it. But let's go. Oh, is it clip number 3 we're going to? Oh, let's try clip number 3 right here. Hang on.
They took notice of the Indians' warm, furry buffalo hides and began acquiring them in trade. As the years passed, that trade became more and more lucrative.
Okay, let's get to another one.
During the year 1870, over 2 million buffalo were killed in the southern plains alone. During the winter of 1872, more than 1.5 million buffalo were killed. And from 1872 to 1874, 5,000 buffalo died each day, every day, each year.
If that doesn't shake your soul up, I don't know what does. So we know the history that we've had with buffalo. We know how the inhumane treatment, the treatment of, the impetus was they were trying to wipe out the Indians, and the way they were going to do it is take out their source of food and clothing and everything. So they were going to take out the buffalo to do that. So they were going to take out 2 groups, in one fell swoop. So here, fast forward, we're in 2021, and you've got these backdoor secret slimy, slick deals going on that when the public eye is, when the public's not in Yellowstone enjoying the beauty and the majesty and seeing all these beautiful buffalo and everything that goes with it, when people aren't looking, the cattle industry, probably the Bureau of Land Management and all the other crazy government agencies, which right there will tell you nothing's going to get done right, all come together and sneak these animals out to slaughterhouses. So again, we just can't get out of our own way. Nature has its way of finding its own balance, and this herd would find its own balance. In your documentary, they say they figure out there's too many females, then there are too many males. Really? Why don't you just let them be and get nature to sort out? Nature's the best balance. When we put our foot in it, disaster happens.
Yeah, it's it's a. I wish I could say it was a comedy of errors, but these are lives just as much as any human does. But unfortunately, again, it comes back to this traditional human approach to this world where animals are subhuman and therefore not deserving of our respect uh, unless we make them into pets and then we relate to them in that way. Otherwise, yeah, it's a
Yeah.
very warped approach to this world, and we can go back to the Bible in our justification. We can go back to great grandfather or dad or whoever it may be that he held this opinion, and that's why I hold this opinion. But it's just so tiny minded
Yeah.
and small spirited that it defies, as you say,
Logic.
this is a badge that humanity will have to wear the rest of its life. That we nearly destroyed an entire species. There were only 23 wild buffalo left. There were a few hundred left in captivity. A couple of three people decided that these animals could be driven to extinction, so they captured some and held them. And so it's from these few sources of captive buffalo that then the breeding program was started up around the turn of the 20th century to bring them back. But they brought them back only to slaughter them again in this annual culling that takes place. So it's obvious that something needs to be done, and Buffalo Field Campaign has laid out. If you go to their website, they've laid out the for maybe new to them exactly their mission in all of this, their actions that they take on a day-to-day basis, and the goal is just to, as you were getting at, just let them be.
Mhm.
It's true that now that Yellowstone is completely surrounded by interests other than the buffalo and wildlife. They're even on the public land there. That's being leased out to one organization or another, and the buffalo are not a priority.
Yeah. So if you're somebody who wants to be proactive and you're watching this video or you're watching this podcast or listening to this podcast and you're like, what can I do? Like, how can I help? The first start would be to contact Buffalo Field Campaign because they are actually on the ground, like confronting like federal officials, making sure they know we're watching what you're doing. You know what I mean? Oh, we kind of, I think you're there. You are saying they're watching what you're doing. You know, we're on to you. um, People can start there, correct? They can, of course, share this documentary around and show the impact of what man has done in such a brief amount of time to the animals of North America, let alone the rest of the world. So I made a note that since 1985, I believe it is, nearly 13,000 have been killed in this slaughterhouse thing. So who what department can people write to say, hey, we're not liking what's going on? Like, which would be the governing? Would it be a federal agency because it's Yellowstone? How would somebody say, look, this isn't right? Do they start with their, House of Representatives or senator? What would you suggest somebody start if they are outraged by what's going on?
In terms of a long-term approach for any one of us, I would come back to following Buffalo Field Campaign, get on their newsletter. They will then send out notifications about upcoming potential interactions that we, the public, can have, whether it's with the Forest Service or just recently, as I shared with you about this state of Montana, their legislature considering some new policies affecting the buffalo. And so on an ongoing basis, those windows of opportunity are the best to take advantage of because those authorities have their ear open. They're required by law to have their ear open.
Mm-hmm.
For most of the time, it's going to be business as usual, especially in the state of Montana, where the livestock industry holds sway. So I would just come back, follow, and in the meantime, it never hurts to write to the superintendent of Yellowstone Park. It
Okay.
never hurts to write to the governor of Montana.
Hmm.
It never hurts to write to any representative for the state of Montana,
Hmm.
and to keep your eye out for legislation policy changes that could affect the buffalo on a national level. And in those cases, you could make contact with your own congressman. But most effective, again, is when these windows of opportunity come up, and Buffalo Field Campaign will let you know about it, because they're very active in their communications with the Montana state government and with their eye on policy making, whether it's federal, state, or local. So that's how I would go about it. I would just keep my eye open. You don't need to fire anything off right now unless you feel so inclined to do so, to the superintendent of Yellowstone Park and to those authorities in the state of Montana.
Let's get to another clip, and then wanted to share something about a previous interview I had that really applies to this whole thing and the way we manage animals on this continent. So let's check this out.
There were no more wild buffalo left to kill, save for 23. 23 of 60 million. A strange sense of regret lingered among some of the public and a few in government.
Okay, speaking of the government, a few weeks ago, I had Dr. Joanna Grossman of the Animal Welfare Institute on, talking about the wild horse issue. And if you knew what your taxpayer dollars were doing and how they were wasted, you would just absolutely lose your mind. They spend $125 million a year in the annual horse roundup. So they instead of just letting these animals run free in their designated area, they round them up. Then they have to find places to keep them, corral them. So they're taking them from the wild, paying people to keep these horses so they're not on the land, to the tune of $125 million a year, instead of just dealing with maybe birth control, some other ways that they can control populations if they are getting out of control. But not the case there. But 125 million. So this is exactly what's happening in the same area in Yellowstone. They're spending taxpayer dollars when nobody's looking to kill these animals, instead of letting nature just run its course and us actually appreciating the buffalo, instead of us trying to always control everything and being in charge of everything. And we know how that always ends up. I mean, this is a staggering thing. Once you put dollars and people realize, oh my God, we're spending that much money, it's frightening. So it's wrong on every level. Let's get to another clip here.
The Buffalo Ranch, though, had served its purpose. Yellowstone's buffalo population would ensure that wild buffalo were a part of the American landscape for posterity. The operation was closed down in 1952, but park managers continued to wrestle with what to do with a population of buffalo that wants to grow, wants to roam, but is only given a fixed amount of land to live on. To make matters worse, the buffalo were confronted at every turn by cruel agents of the Montana Department of Livestock.
Yes, you see, when you're dealing with government agencies coming in trying to control everything, then everything is out of control, because they think once they get their foot in the door, then they can take over the entire room. So again, this is a crisis going on in Yellowstone, that you may go to Yellowstone and say, oh, how beautiful, how majestic, but there is a really dark secret going on, and there is a really bad business going on behind the scenes. Somebody's profiting from the beef from the buffalo. I mean, this is a sordid backroom deal, and we need to be aware government agencies and state agencies are involved in this, and it is wrong. When you look at the history of what this animal has gone through to almost being wiped out in a short amount of years, shame on us. Let's change the way we start looking at our life. Let nature guide the population. Let nature decide the ways it is going. Let us step out and let nature take care of things, and pull out the industries that are really behind this evil. The cattle industry, the Bureau of Land Management. these organizations do not know what they're doing. They just are all in it for the buck, and we need to call them out now. This is not acceptable, and this is where we stand up and take a stand for the voiceless. And you're doing it where buffalo roam, this short documentary. My special guest is Larry Laverty, and you are calling out and you are showing the shame of America on what we've done with this beautiful, magnificent animal and the treatment that it keeps being subjected to. It just never ends. It just never ends. Here's a final clip of the documentary. And again, it's incredibly powerful. Everybody who's watched it their minds are blown by it, but it's something that we all have to see. So here we go.
As migrating buffalo attempt to leave the park in search of food during the park's harsh winter, they're lured and forced into a series of pens. Families are torn apart, freedom ripped away. It's from these pens that most of the buffalo are loaded onto cattle trailers and transported to a nearby slaughterhouse. An especially cruel end, considering their home was a national park, and they were nearly hunted to extinction only a century ago.
Powerful, powerful stuff. I'm really proud of you, Larry, for having the courage and the heart and then spending the time to put this documentary together. And we're going to have it on our site, and I'm going to share it on my Facebook page as well and on Nasefu Wildlife. How can people reach out to you if they want to learn more? How can people share this video? Like, do you have it on a specific website, Larry Laverty Wildlife? Like, how can people get the word out?
Yeah, since it was just recently completed and I've just basically rolled it out, it's basically available to the public through YouTube. So if you go to my Larry Laverty Wildlife YouTube channel, you can share it from there. You can watch it there, and eventually it'll have more outlets. But that was the beginning, and that's how I'm reaching people so far. And again, I just encourage people to make contact with a field campaign, which was the purpose for making this film in the first place, was to not only increase awareness of what's happening to the buffalo, what's being done to them, but to help people realize that there's a solution here, that we don't have to sit back and wring our hands. We can take action to fight this, to try to find a better future for the buffalo, and that would be buffalo field campaigns. So that's that's the nuts and bolts there. I just encourage people to connect, go to their website, and follow them, follow what they're doing, and support what they're doing when you can.
Yeah, they're a great organization. I was really impressed with Mike Meese, who was a guest that you arranged for us a few months ago, and he was a powerful speaker on behalf of Buffalo and everything going on. And for the tens of thousands of people that visit Yellowstone, be aware this beautiful park is only beautiful by what's in it, and you don't want the beauty mismanaged, maltreated. You don't want that. You want it to be these animals to finally get the treatment they deserve, because boy, they've had a rough ride with us, man. We come into play. It's a rough ride. Again, Larry, I'm so proud to call you a friend. I know we're going to be hanging out in Zambia. Hopefully this year you're going to be doing a photography package. You're going to get people out there and have like a photography seminar, and you know your genuine soul of caring and wanting to make the world a better place. Again, you've got a book already released, a beautiful coffee table book called Power and Majesty: The Plight and Preservation of the African Elephant. You're working on a book now for the Asian elephant. You've done a documentary, and you're going to be climbing Everest in April. I mean, you do it all. So I'm really proud of you. It's a really powerful piece, and especially the end. We were all talking about the end, the footage and the photos that you had at the end of the documentary. I was just like, what is wrong with us? What is wrong with us? What is wrong with us? Where did we lose our way? We have got to get back on track. And this is a great documentary to maybe drive people to get back on the right track and actually caring about something other than themselves, looking at the big picture.
Yeah, I just want to add that there's a unique element to this that struck me, especially that day in 2013 that I marched with the Global March for Elephants. And that is, this is a selfless thing that we do. It's because we want a better world. We don't gain financially. We don't gain in any way that we tangibly that we can see or feel in the day-to-day world. But in the greater scheme of things, we want the world to be a better place. And that includes for these other beings who have lives just like we do. And so it's from this selflessness. And that's, by the way, is what Buffalo Field Campaign is. That's the engine that runs them. There's a volunteer element there. Every year, dozens of volunteers come, some from around the world, but certainly from all over the United States, all ages, to volunteer their time to further the efforts of Buffalo Field Campaign by monitoring the buffalo in the field, watching for trouble.
Yeah.
And so there's just something righteous about this, that if you care about what's right in this world, then certainly something that should be on your list are the buffalo of Yellowstone Country and the buffalo in general.
That's awesome. Well said, my friend. I hope this documentary gets submitted in all the film festivals. I hope it wins awards. And most importantly, I hope it changes hearts, because our hearts were changed. I knew about the plight of the buffalo, but I had no idea until I met you, Buffalo Field Campaign, and then looking at this documentary that you put together. Again, you're not making any money. This is a labor of love, and you can really feel it. So Larry Laverty, you're pretty special, my friend. You're pretty special. Thank you so much thanks for being my first guest and then coming back.
Oh, that's easy. And I've got to return the compliment. Everything you just said about me, I say about you. I'm so grateful that you're a voice, not only for your own efforts, but for all these other people that you've had on your show and that you share on a day-to-day basis with other people. Thank goodness there's a group of us out here in this crazy world that do care, are doing things, and we are having an effect. So you're like our lead voice. You reach more people. So just keep going, Co.
Oh, thanks, my love. It's a labor of love. I would do this all day long. It's what I want to do. I want to change the world with you. So I appreciate it. Again, my special guest, Larry Laverty. He's an author, photographer, conservationist, mountaineer, and safe journey. Please take care of yourself in Mount Everest, because we want to have you back, because I have a feeling you're going to win some awards with this documentary. So thank you so much. And once again, thank you so much for listening to COEXIST. This is a platform for great people and great organizations to share what they're doing with the world. And if we all come together, we really can impact the world and affect change. So anyway, that's COEXIST. Thank you so much, Larry. Good luck up north. We love and miss you.
I love you too.
All right.
Bye-bye.
See you soon. Thanks. And we'll
You
see
bet.
you soon again on another episode of COEXIST right here on IQ Podcast. Oh, and I want to say thank you to our sponsors, Attorney King, Sequan Casino and Resort, Indian Motorcycle of San Diego, the Gym, Serrano's, Coronado, and IB Fitness. You guys, thanks for making this happen. We'll see you soon. Thank you.